it was a good 2 hours apart from when I first saw that mothership psilocybin caterpillar to feeling the liberation and beauty and bliss of the butterfly patterns and like how that all turned out. It was just like too perfect. Like I don't understand how that could have just been something my brain made up to entertain itself. I was like, the loving alien mothership has arrived. I had a truly mind-blowing experience on mushrooms a few months ago, and it's one of those trips that really makes you wonder what reality really is and how a realm of such cosmic beauty can exist just around the corner. This is an experience that shook me to my core, and it really did make me question, how is this in the same reality as everyday life? The process of metamorphosis is always used as a metaphor for transcendence, transformation, and rebirth. And this experience only validates that further. And I want to share that experience with you. I often cite my first mystical experience as something that happened whenever I was 9 years old. I witnessed the entire metamorphosis of a monarch butterfly. And when I saw that butterfly emerge on a spring morning, I felt something eternal and numinous. And I didn't have the words to describe it, but I felt like I could see the shining light of eternity emanating from this butterfly that was drying off its wings. It was the magic of life and nature. I guess it really stuck with me because this mushroom trip reminded me of that age-old metamorphosis metaphor. And we'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to give you guys some context first. Every good psychonaut takes care of their set and setting. And one of the biggest parts of your set and setting is the intention that you set. So before I ever have a trip, I write down a note on my phone. I make a small list of intentions or ideas I want to address, or maybe some music I want to listen to, or a talk by Alan Watts or something like that. And I kind of just lay it out in bullet points. It's usually a list of 2 to 4 intentions. And sure enough, every time I trip after writing that list down, at least 2 or 3 of those intentions will come up in my trip. So it's a very powerful method for getting what you want out of the experience. In my phone notes for the ideas I wanted to explore on this trip, I wrote singing, alchemy, and the cosmic feminine. One of the ideas that I got from Terence McKenna was this notion that the mushroom is connected to our language faculties, and that has a connection to singing. And this also is relevant to DMT, where you have experiences that he says the elves are singing objects into existence, and there's something about the voice that seems to be very important, at least in his stories. So that's always been an angle and an area of interest for me. So the idea of exploring the cosmic feminine, what that means to me is kind of the idea that Carl Jung talked about, where all humans have both masculine and feminine energies or qualities. But if you're a guy or a masculine-oriented person, the feminine aspects of yourself are unconscious, but they're also connected to your soul and your creativity. So as an artist, it's actually a really important thing to be tapped into. In a previous mushroom trip, I wanted to address this idea of the masculine side and see what that meant for me personally. Now that I've done that, I wanted to circle back around to the feminine aspects. And there's the alchemy that I wanted to explore. This is an idea that's been kind of calling me ever since a mushroom trip I had 10 years ago, where I saw a vision of an alchemist creating the alchemist stone, the philosopher's stone. So it's been a subject of interest of mine, and it always is connected to my mushroom trip somehow. So it's a thread that I've been pulling on for about 10 years now. So it had been a good 6 or 7 months since my previous mushroom trip, which I took 1.5 G's lemon tech of penis envy mushrooms. And so I wanted to trip again and go a little deeper this time. So this time I wanted to take double the dose, 3 grams of penis envy mushrooms, lemon tech, all on an empty stomach. At the time of this trip, I had just come back from a 5-week tour playing in a band around the US and Canada with a band called Vinyl Williams. And this was my last day off before returning to my usual day job grind. So I wanted to kind of cap it off, especially since I was in this mode of freedom and exploration. And I was joined by my roommate Kenny, who took the exact same dose as me at the same exact time. All right, so this is where I'm going to refer to my trip journal. Let me go grab it. So I've always been obsessed with the idea of writing down my thoughts during a trip. As futile as it may be sometimes, I still want to write stuff down just in case I forget any of the little details later on. I model my trip journals after kind of like an Arrowwood trip report where it's semi-scientific. They'll put like the times, like 8:00 p.m. I dosed, and they'll kind of go on from there. But usually with higher doses, around the peak of the experience, things kind of devolve into madness, and whatever I write down at that point in the trip is usually just some really silly stuff, but it's funny to look back at after. Okay, so the first thing I wrote, 8:10 p.m. Me and Kenny dosed 3G Lemon Tech. We set our intentions for healing and dissolution. 8:18. Starting to feel something for sure. At this point, it's almost too subtle to describe, but the feeling is imminent. We're sitting on the couch listening to David Eisen. Nothing in the visual field is moving, but I feel like it wants to. Now I'm feeling that familiar state of presence. I'm anchored in the now. This music is beautiful. My mind feels clear. We both got good wishes from our girlfriends. I feel safe in this home with this friend. 8:28. With eyes closed, I see faint colors. The same ones you see after looking at light, but they're coming to life. 8:45. It's definitely coming on now. Eyes closed, I still see very faintly, but I can feel my inner emotion ebb and see how the visuals change with that. And so this is over the span of 45 minutes, just jotting things down here and there. So this is where the trip really starts to come on. And as you guys know, with bigger doses, it comes on strong. So So the next thing that I wrote was, just felt the presence of the loving alien mothership. Wow. So the first visual that I had when I closed my eyes was a caterpillar. And it appeared to be somewhere like on the forest floor in the dark. But I had this sense that the caterpillar was huge and it was cosmic. It had all the little separate parts of its body, and it has those little antennas on each little section of the body. These antennas were emanating light, and not only that, but I got the feeling that this was more than a caterpillar. It felt like this thing that I was seeing, this creature, represented the spirit of the psilocybin and whatever alien other that you encounter while you're on it. And it also felt like the caterpillar was huge. So it gave me the impression that this was like the mothership, but I also felt this sense of loving energy coming from it. So I said that and I wrote it in my journal. I was like, the loving alien mothership has arrived. The come up continued to come on, and I saw another vision that was really interesting. It was like I was in this vaulted space, almost like if you've seen what a nuclear fusion reactor looks like. It's this kind of like vaulted circular space. I was in one of those, and I saw what I guess people would call an entity. I like to call them apparent entities. It was like a human figure with a mushroom head. It was in this fusion reactor zone, and there was no interaction between me and it. I didn't even get the sense that it was, aware of me, but it was just something I saw. And I actually found this visualization that looks exactly like what I saw. At this point, we were both sitting on our couch in the living room and saying to each other various versions of holy shit. The come up was coming on strong, and I would see these incredible visions and be oohing and awing at them. But it wasn't all alien bliss. The come up had some moments of extreme discomfort for me and Kenny. I think it might have been some adrenaline kicking in, but I felt this kind of sense of doom and fear. And it was accompanied by a very physical sensation, which I could only describe as like, you know, in the movie theater, whenever there's a trailer playing and then there's some like scary epic thing that happens, it goes dum. Like, imagine if you felt that sound as like a physical sensation in your body. It's just like, and I felt like it was going like a steel column within my body, which now that I think back on it, you know, when the body has adrenaline rushes, your blood kind of all rushes to the center and away from your limbs because you're going into survival mode. So as much as I was, you know, trying to stay calm and like keep myself cool, you still aren't always in control of how you're reacting to that. So I think that this was my ego kind of grasping for straws. Even though I wanted it to dissolve, that was the intention that I set. That doesn't mean that it comes that easily whenever you're in the throes of a very intense come up. I started to feel all these crazy bodily sensations like tingling hands and kind of all the signs of anxiety. And this is when I began to like talk myself down and kind of comfort myself and be like, you're okay, you're safe, just breathe, you know, all that good stuff. But it didn't get any easier. For a while, it felt like a internal battle between good and evil, because I was feeling all these sensations of doom and like fear, but then also getting these incredible visuals and being like, whoa, that's so beautiful and cool and like, holy shit, you know? So it just kept going back and forth like this. And there was a moment where Kenny stepped away to go to the bathroom, and just even him being gone for like 2 minutes, first of all, felt like much longer, and it felt scary to be alone at that time. So I remember that when he came back, it was like, oh, like it felt like such a relief, even though I was still going through the battle. At this point, I felt like it would be really comforting to talk to somebody who was on base level reality. So I had actually started texting this trip assistant hotline called Fireside, knowing that they weren't actively dissolving and seeing alien caterpillar motherships was a comforting notion at that time. Something that I would realize later about my journey is that this process of the trip was just like the metamorphosis stage of going into the cocoon. My friend actually pointed out to me later that when a caterpillar goes into a cocoon, they're actually dissolved down to like a liquid besides a few of their vital organs, and then they're reconstructed from that point on. So this metaphor is like really in line with a psychedelic experience, because you have to dissolve to be transformed. And another thing that reinforces this cocoon idea is I have this super soft tripping blanket that I actually got from the Psyched Substance gift shop. And it's like a super soft on the inside blanket, and it has a hood on it. So you put it on when you're tripping and you feel like super safe. Like it's like a happy cocoon, like you're like in a womb and you feel safe and held. It can be a very calming thing to wear when you're tripping. This was my cocoon. And then I put on an Alan Watts recording that I had heard the other day, and I thought it would be good to listen to while we were tripping. And I'm pretty sure Kenny was mind blown by it, but at this point in my trip, it was just too chaotic inside for me to even pay attention to what he was saying. But I'm glad that Kenny got some value out of it. Next on the YouTube playlist that I made was a Terence McKenna video that I actually decided to hold off on till later, because just how my trip was going at that point, I felt like hearing Terence McKenna speak in tongues was going to be a little too intense for what I was ready for at that point. It didn't seem like the right time, but we would get to that later. At the same time, Kenny was going through his own whirlwind of experiences, and we could barely communicate about it. I had actually set my dodecahedron lamp over here in the living room, and it projects these patterns on the wall like you can see here, and I had it on a green light setting, and Kenny was like staring at this thing on the wall, and it looked like the face of like a caterpillar or a grasshopper or something, which again goes with this insect motif that we're both apparently experiencing. I was still dealing with feeling very unsettled, so I took another Terence McKenna idea and decided to sing to calm myself down. And singing on mushrooms was a very interesting experience. It felt like, although I didn't feel very coordinated with my voice, it did feel very fluid and kind of expressive. It felt good to slide up and down the notes. It was all very meditative. That's whenever I started to record audio of my experience, and this is when I had this insight about the Philosopher's Stone, which is one of the things that I had set as an intention.
Musical stratum. This is my cosmic dough. It's your cosmic Play-Doh. Play-Doh. Music is the mold.
Because I was experiencing synesthesia with the sound, I was visualizing the texture or the timbre of the sound as this kind of space-time Play-Doh, this physical thing, this diamond-shaped little zone of space-time that you as a musician could manipulate into your own crystallized version of the Philosopher's Stone. So this is an answer I'd been seeking because in previous trips, I saw the Philosopher's Stone, the alchemists were working on it, and I got the intuition that it's the artist's mission to continue what the alchemists were trying to achieve in creating this stone, but I still didn't know how that was to be done. But this vision gave me a more clear definition of that. It showed me that music is like our own synesthetic piece of space-time Play-Doh that we can manipulate to our liking and our aesthetic preferences, and at the same time it's imbued with the human spirit. So that's my working definition of the Philosopher's Stone, like our own little piece of the universe. We sat around for a bit and talked, and then the idea came up to put on a record on the record player. And I had just picked up this new album, Dots and Loops by Stereolab, while I was on tour and brought it home. So it's an album that I love, but I've actually never listened to it tripping before. However, I don't know if any of you have tried to operate a record player or any kind of technology while you're in the middle of the peak of your trip, but that was a whole ordeal. So I had to get Kenny to come help me figure out what I was dealing with, because it was just like all so odd, like just even touching stuff, it was just like, what? So he came to help, and then I was thinking like, yeah, like it's so cool how humans can work in teams to accomplish stuff, and it was just this most basic task, which was really kind of pathetic that I wasn't able to do it, but I'm sure some of you can relate to that feeling. The thing is, especially at a peak, your physical grid of space-time feels distorted, so even basic things can feel super odd and alien and confusing. So I had bought this album, but it was like this deluxe 3-disc set, and I hadn't even opened it before, so I was trying to find side A, and it was just so confusing at this time. And I finally pulled a record out, and then I looked at it, and it was side E. And we started laughing hysterically because it just felt like it represented how we felt at the time, like how we were coming at this from some like off-kilter angle.
Serial side E.
Oh,
That's probably.
It's the music is in drop H.
I've never heard of a side E in my life. That's where we were at. Like that's where we're at. We're on side E right now.
Oh my god, dude. Oh. And even the text on the album just looked so Martian and trippy that we just felt like it was so perfect for this moment that we were having. And you get the impression that whoever made that designed it specifically for these tripping dudes to be looking at and tripping out over it. As this was going on and we started to listen to the album, I felt compelled to start to walk around my living room. And there was something strange about the way I felt when I was walking around. It felt like I wasn't the one in control. I was getting the sense that the mushroom was using me as a vehicle to experience what it's like to be a human. So it felt like it was like, you know, some little alien driving behind the scenes and just like, whoa, you know, I'm learning how to walk. Look at me, I'm a human. And this idea just felt really funny. And so I kept just wobbling around like a drunk toddler. As the music continued to play and we finally found side A, it sounded incredible. The drum beat starts off and it's just this kind of driving drum beat. And I was just like bobbing my head, you know, involuntarily to the beat of the music. And I was still stumbling around, but it started to kind of slowly shift into this flow movement that was still kind of stumbling everywhere. And the tripping blanket has these pockets on the inside where you can put your hands. So then it becomes this kind of like flow toy as you're kind of moving around. More and more, I felt incredible joy. It felt like this music was the soundtrack to my life, like your own personal theme song. And it's the music that would be playing when you're just like strutting around, you know, like living life and feeling good. And that feeling of confidence and swagger just kept ramping up. And eventually I was like just vibing super hard, and like it turned into this flowy kind of Tai Chi dance movement, which is something that, although I've had an interest in it, I've never done something like that. Like, I'm the kind of person who like doesn't like to dance because I'm shy about it, but also I'm not always like feeling the music. So this was the total opposite case. I felt like I just like let go of my inhibition, and I was just doing this insanely like fulfilling flow movement to the music. And I felt a sense of victory in this dance, like I was doing a victory lap. And in a sense I was, because I had just come back from this tour and I actually bought this album on the tour. So it was like this artifact that I brought from my journey back home, and here I am on mushrooms and like listening. So it just felt like the perfect cap to this adventure that I had. And like, it just felt so good. And it made me reflect that, you know, we don't reflect on our victories in life as much as we could or should. And even though it's temporary, it's good to like celebrate when things do go well. You don't want to get too high, but like, yeah, you want to enjoy that, ride it out. And this whole dance I was doing, it had this tribal feeling to it. Like the celebration was similar to what you see a Native American tribe do when there's like a marriage or they won the battle, and it's like this very like strong sense of victory and purpose and celebration, and it was powerful. And this is where that idea of the feminine energy comes in, that intention that I had set earlier. It was like the music was entering me and I was yielding to the music. I was surrendering to the music and letting it possess me and control me. So it was yielding yet empowering. And I feel like that is a great representation of what the feminine energy is. And the music just continued to sound more and more divine. There's this part in one of the songs where the guitar is like got a fuzz pedal on, and it's like about to play the note, and you just hear all these like crunchy like, and then finally wham, it goes wham, and it just felt like orgasmic. Like, I gotta be real with you guys here, because this is just how it was experienced, but it felt very sexual in nature. Not like in a physical sense, but like a full body sense. Like this tension and release. But it was just like, whoa, like I just felt like, whoa. It was insane. It felt so good just to hear that sense of tension finally being released by this guitar coming in on this song. One of the songs gave me just such shamanic vibes. I felt like the singer, Letitia Sadier, was this shamanic goddess singing under a waterfall and conjuring the spiritual matrix with her beautiful melodies. And then there was another song, which I believe it was A Flower Called Nowhere, and it just sounded so good. Like, I can't describe to you guys, like, it sounded like the next level of good, to the point where I was saying to Kenny, like, this sounds like God to me. Like, whatever this sound is, this is what God is to me. And it's divine, and I feel like I need to be worshiping it. So I got on my knees and like bowed to the speaker like someone in a Muslim prayer. That's legitimately how I felt at the time. At this point, Kenny and I were both absolutely blissed out and fully in the peak of our experience. And we were closing our eyes and experiencing beautiful visions behind our eyelids and just gawking at the amazement and wonder of it all. When I closed my eyes, I saw what looked like the pattern of a butterfly wing. It looked just like a blue morpho butterfly. So it was like a black and like a really nice, almost teal blue color. But the thing about this was, first of all, it had eyes going throughout the entire pattern, and the colors looked like they were painted with watercolor. And on top of that, it wasn't like I was looking at a single pair of butterfly wings. It was like a tapestry of that kind of pattern, and it took up my whole field of vision. And it was also fractal or geometric. It was kind of all encompassing. And the music was kind of creating sensations within that fabric. And I was like looking at it and seeing like kind of lights move and stuff, but it was just so beautiful. And I was just blissed out completely. Like, I'm reliving it now. It just felt so good. And it was all accompanied by this feeling of liberation that I was telling you about. It just felt like I was free, and I had let go of all of the like weight and baggage that I had been like carrying with me psychically. It was just like all gone, and I just felt like celebration of life, and the lack of inhibition that came with that was what was so empowering feeling. And I could tell Kenny was seeing something kind of similar, because he was just like leaning back in awe, like, while this was going on too. I kept dancing to this music and I was feeling good. So this is the point in the trip where I bust out the ganj, and we had this water pipe that we were using, and I was just kind of like continuing to move and dance around and like hitting the pipe and just feeling really good. And then I would just kind of lose track and forget that I even was holding on to the pipe. And so then it became this like magical prop that I was using, which luckily I didn't break it, but it became this magical item just because of the shape of it and stuff. And because I was smoking and moving and vibing out, I felt like I was a psychedelic Snoop Dogg for a number of reasons. For one, because we were smoking, and, you know, Snoop's always vibing out, you know, and like dancing, and that's how I always picture him. But the other thing is that tripping can make you really aware of your body, and I'm a really lanky dude, and so is Snoop Dogg. So I just felt like the way that I felt comfortable in my own body, I was like more aware of my lankiness, and because of that, I felt even more like a trippy version of Snoop Dogg. So that was fun. And this is when a really funny vision occurred to me. I don't know how this even came up, but I got a vision of Tucker Carlson, the conservative news host who at that time was still on Fox News, who is very, you know, I won't get into his politics, but I let's just say I don't agree with him a lot of the time. And he's always got this like scrunched eyebrow look to him, which is like, I think it's kind of like this manly thing he's putting on. And it usually is accompanied with him like reacting in fear or confusion to something that he doesn't like. And I was seeing this image of him scrunching his brow in my head, and I imagined like a CGI sequence of this scrunch in his brow just like imploding and then opening up as a third eye. It was just hilarious, dude. I was telling Kenny about it and I was just laughing so hard at this idea. Like, it would be a funny segment in like a music video or something. And this image was forever burned into my consciousness. So the album was still playing and I decided to chill out for a second and sit down on the couch. This song came on where they're playing a vibraphone. And I was looking at my glass, and you know, in your mushroom mind, there are no boundaries, so everything's connected. The sound of this vibraphone, it looked like, you know, when you hit a glass, you know, when people use glasses of water as a musical instrument. So I was looking at that at the same time as hearing this, and I was like looking at my cup and holding it, and I was like, this glass of water is the most Stereolab pocket of the universe right now. And then I was like pretending to listen to the inside of it, and we're just goofing off and like, you know, being silly. And then that's whenever I got up, I was like, Kenny, let's take a picture, and I'm gonna stand next to my dodecahedron lamp and hold the pipe and listen on the inside of this glass, and then we'll say to people that this is the secret of the universe. And so we got a picture. Still listening to Stereolab, I was amazed that humans are capable of something so divine, such divine creations. And it made me realize that we all have this spark of divinity within us, and that at the same time, humans are just these unassuming creatures. We're just these advanced, or if you even want to call them advanced apes, but yet we're capable of something so divine. And I just saw that as like this interesting kind of the duality of mankind kind of thing. The reason I also thought of that is because Kenny told me a story where he said his girlfriend actually ran into Letitia, the singer of this band Stereolab, in a bar in Austin, and that she was just this totally unassuming person. And then just the contrast of that with like the level of divine wisdom I feel in this music, it was just like, wow, like we have this spark. And then that led me to my next thought, which is that we all have this spark, and there's a chance that we could destroy ourselves, and that we don't need to let that happen. So I gave this impassioned speech to Kenny about how like we have this divine spark and we need to protect it at all costs. So I'm just gonna play that for you because my phone was still recording. It's like the fact that humans could create something that is divine.
Yeah,
it's like an actual spark of divinity. Yeah. And like Lee McCloskey, it's like the fact that we could throw this away and it would be our own doing is fucking absurd, dude.
It's the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
And we gotta fucking do whatever it takes to fucking keep that shit going. And not only that, but improve it.
Yeah.
Like, pass off the fucking baton better. And during this speech, I actually felt a switch in my energy where I felt this like super primal instinctive urge to protect this spark. Whatever this is, it has to be protected at all costs. And I felt myself like, you know, straighten out and like be ready, like in battle mode to protect this thing. At this point, the peak started to plateau And we just continued reveling in the strangeness of the mushroom experience, how strange it felt to try communicating what we felt, and the oddity of touching textures and objects. Now that I was feeling really good, I decided it was time to give that Terence McKenna glossolalia video a spin. Which, by the way, this particular video is something that I've investigated in one of my previous trips, and I even had my friend who gave me these mushrooms. He investigated listening to this video and he had his own crazy experiences, so I'm going to link that in the description so you can check it out. I really recommend listening to it while you're tripping. So we got really stoned, sat in front of the TV, and got ready to jump into this thing. And it was unreal. So Terence starts the video off just talking regularly, and he basically is saying like, this is this secret shamanic dimension that it has always been available.
This is what has been kept from ordinary mankind for millennia. This is the real secret behind the idea of magic. This is the universe into which your entire world is destined to dissolve.
Then came the moment of truth. He did the glossolalia, and I closed my eyes to see what visions would unfold. And what I was seeing was some kind of strangely alien-shaped rock that was floating around the orbit of the Earth. And I got the sense that whatever this rock was, it wasn't just some plain asteroid. First of all, its shape was really odd. And second of all, I felt like it was some kind of ship or something that I didn't understand that just happened to look like a rock. What I saw was a strangely shaped object. It had one kind of big piece and one little piece, and it was all just totally uneven. It didn't look symmetrical or anything like that. Not only that, but the visions continued in what looked like some kind of alien shipyard in orbit around space. It was like this bustling construction zone of whatever these alien rock spaceships were. It was like where they were all being built, or some kind of factory where these things are involved. It was like heavy industry, but instead of technology, it was all rocks. And one of the other things I saw was these two rocks that were kind of angled like this, and I saw these little glowing lights at each edge, and being suspended between the rocks was a strange attractor. It was a Lorenz attractor. The thing about the attractor was it wasn't complete. It was melted on one side. So I don't know how to interpret this. Like, maybe the attractor was being constructed, or this was some kind of welding zone where they were fixing it, or this was some kind of portal or something that I don't understand, but it was a very clear image that I saw. And this was a vision that was created by Terence's shamanic vocalizations that I think he got from the DMT elves. And the pattern that I'm seeing every time I investigate this, or my friend does, is that whatever visions you will get will not make sense. It appears to be something truly alien and unknown. Although I do have some speculations about what I saw in this trip that I'll talk about in a little bit. After that, we listened to another Terence McKenna video called Psilocybin is Your Teacher. And this was a really great video of Terence just like at his best, and he would just commit to these like comedic bits, but he would take it so far that you just like didn't expect him to go that far with these little bits that he was doing. And so it was just really funny, and we were laughing, and it was all relevant to, you know, us having our experience. And I remember Kenny at the end of the video saying like, I love this man so much. And the thing about this video of Terence is they didn't have actual footage of him talking, so they put in some visionary art and things like that. But one of the pieces of art actually really matched the aesthetic of what I was experiencing on the trip. And this kind of made me reflect on art and technology, because, you know, when you're in the mushroom space, it's like this shamanic realm that is outside of time, it seems, right? But then you'll be in this zone outside of time, and then you'll see something like, you know, the latest computer generated art, and then you realize that we are in a relationship to linear time, especially as we experience through, you know, our change in technology. It was interesting though, because it's like we're using these things, these digital forms of art to recreate visionary experiences. And so the better our computer gets, the more accurate it actually is, you know, like painting versus like on a computer, you can make it like 3D and like glowing and luminescent and stuff. So it's like the linear time is catching up to whatever this dimension is that is so full of visionary and incredible art, and the vivid colors and aesthetics of the mushroom dimension. So we were now solidly on the come down of the trip. Kenny showed me one of his songs that he was working on. It sounded really cool, and we made some Blue Lotus tea just to kind of like really relax on the come down. Then Kenny actually left, and then I sat on the couch and watched some Drew Binsky travel videos, which felt like a very comforting and earthly thing to kind of bring me back down. Reflecting on this experience, I can break it down to a few things. I was looking for all the details and meanings that I could, while ignoring the most obvious part, which was this trip took me through an entire metamorphosis from caterpillar to butterfly. And that blows my mind, because like, how did it know that that's how it was going to unfold? Like, even if this was some elaborate like myth making of my own mind, like that was incredibly powerful, because it was a good 2 hours apart from when I first saw that mothership psilocybin caterpillar to feeling the liberation and beauty and bliss of the butterfly patterns, and like how that all turned out. It was just like too perfect. Like I don't understand how that could have just been something my brain made up to entertain itself. Like it just seemed too perfect. But I don't know, man. Just what do you think that was? And my interest in alchemy brought me to a new understanding of this concept. Our art or our music is our own little slice of space-time in the universe that we can form into a spiritual object. So now I have this new understanding of my own relationship to alchemy and what this whole idea of the Philosopher's Stone means. Something that I've had at least 3 or 4 visions relating to that in my life. So it just continues to unfold as I pull at this thread. I had that vision of the mushroom man inside of the nuclear reactor. I still haven't done DMT, but this was the closest thing that I felt to a DMT visual that I've ever had, because it was 3D and it was like in a vaulted space. You kind of hear about that, like it's this feeling of being inside somewhere. So that was really cool. The other biggest thing besides the caterpillar metamorphosis was this space rock situation, this shipyard in low Earth orbit that I seem to witness, either above Earth or some other alien planet or Earth in the future. I don't know what it was, but something that I've began to notice with the mushroom in my own experiences is that it brushes me up against the collective unconscious of humanity. In another experience I had, I saw a space telescope and I was looking around, scanning for life out there in the universe, and I was revealed that it's going to be everywhere when we find it. But the space telescope represented the unknown, and that's kind of how I'm viewing the collective unconscious. It's like right at the border of what humanity knows, the limit of our actual knowledge. Right beyond that threshold is this kind of imaginal space, because it's not known. It's only what is in our collective imagination. It's only a liminal space of possibility. So that's the kind of stuff that comes up on my mushroom trip. So that's what I think this vision was also. So there's this professor from Harvard called Avi Loeb. He was kind of ridiculed because there was this asteroid object that came flying from interstellar space near Earth and then back out again. But there was a lot of strange things about this asteroid. For one is that it seemed like it would have been oddly shaped. Like they think it was like a cigar-shaped object. And it also seemed to speed up whenever it was beginning to exit our solar system, which is all unusual behavior. One of the possible explanations is that this was some kind of alien ship. And this is what this professor guy, Avi Loeb, was suggesting. So this object was called Oumuamua. And I think that idea was in my mind. And this must have been what I was kind of associating with when I saw all of these weird alien rocks. Like the idea of this asteroid thing actually being some kind of alien tech. But this is at the limit of what we actually know. So that's again why I'm connecting it to this idea of the collective unconscious, that this represents the border of what we as a collective species, the hive mind, what we actually know, and then what we imagine. So I find that to be a really interesting concept. And I was also surprised to see in this vision, I saw the strange attractor, the Lorenz attractor, which kind of ties everything together in a crazy way, like the mushroom's making a pun or something. This Lorenz attractor is a visualization of the mathematics of chaos, also known as the butterfly effect. So not only did I get the full transformation of a butterfly, but I saw the strange attractor that represents the butterfly effect, which is this whole notion that one small change in input can have a drastic effect on the output of a situation. And it may seem like chaos, but there is actually a pattern in an order to it that's just complex. And it can be represented by these visuals like the Lorenz attractor. So that is just such a beautiful way to tie all of this together. And it's like, hey, I've talked to people who think that this is all being generated in the brain, and if it is only coming from my brain, then we are all capable of genius. Like the level of intricacy and planning that my brain must have been able to do while tripping balls, mind you, and to be able to weave this entire narrative while everything else is just like melting in chaos, like that is incredible. So whether or not this is some kind of entity or other alien presence that's showing us these narratives, or this is our brain, either side of that coin is incredible, and we have something to marvel and be amazed at in this universe. And as human beings, we're really lucky to have this gift of a human mind, a human brain, because it's capable of incredible things, especially under the influence of psilocybin. This trip was one of the most earth-shattering experiences that I've ever had, and it was extremely rewarding and beautiful. But I want to give a little warning to people that it was not all easy, and it's like it kind of came at a cost. Like the come up was scary and uncertain, and there's a risk there that I could have actually gone the other way and had a really terrifying experience. But I had set my intentions, I had a friend with me, and took care of my set and settings so that I would be in a very safe environment in my own home. So I just want to keep that in mind, especially for you newer psychonauts, that's all really important to take care of before setting sail. So y'all, if you have any trip reports of your own, I always like hearing other people's stories, so write that in the comments. And if you want to be updated whenever I put out a new video, definitely subscribe. But subscribing barely means anything, so if you hit the little bell thing, it'll actually give you a notification when I drop a new video. We also have a Discord server where we're creating a gathering place for cool and intelligent psychonauts, and so I'm going to put the link for all of that in the description, so feel free to join our little village. This video is also going to be part of a playlist of all my trip reports and guest friend trip reports, so if you want to see more of those stories, check out that playlist. Also, if you want to know more about the collective unconscious and the Carl Jungian side of things, I have a video series that I made a few years ago called Breadcrumbs to the Unconscious, where I kind of describe my story of dealing with the collective unconscious and all of that stuff connected to the mushroom. And I also have a Patreon page if you want to support the channel directly. That's of course totally voluntary. I'm trying to come up with kind of cool perks to do that, so if you have any ideas for that, I'm all ears. So it's gonna be it, guys, so peace. Thanks for listening to my story.
Yo man, I had a fucking great experience. I mean, it wasn't totally easy the whole time, like shit got really heavy, but like when you push through that, there's like so much beauty on the other side, and yeah, I'm gonna need to process that one for a while, because goddamn, I can't believe that like that shit is the same existence as this one. Like, what the fuck, dude? Oh my god.